In the unlikely event of a general emergency and a release from a nuclear power plant, the state of Minnesota will issue protective action decisions recommending the evacuation of the sub-areas 2 miles surrounding the plant and 5 miles downwind. Bordering these sub-areas, traffic and access control points will be set up to allow people to leave the evacuated areas while preventing them from entering. Nevertheless, there are still a number of reasons that re-entry into these restricted zones by emergency workers and the general public may be necessary. Counties where restricted zones are located are responsible for coordinating re-entry activities. Re-entry is an approved temporary entry into a restricted zone under controlled conditions to conduct essential activities. Early in an incident, during the plume phase while the release is still ongoing, the priorities for re-entry are life safety and incident stabilization. Emergency workers such as field teams and nuclear power plant workers will be allowed to re-enter by showing their IDs to the officers at traffic and access control points. Members of the general public, however, will not automatically be allowed to re-enter at these locations. As a result, there must be a system in place to allow re-entry for these members of the general public who have an actual need. All people that are approved to re-enter while the release is still ongoing will be treated as emergency workers. This means that before they are allowed to re-enter, they must first receive personal protective equipment, potassium iodide, and dosimetry, and be trained on its use. While given a stay time not to exceed 8 hours and a turnback limit of 1 hour as read on their dosimeter. They must also receive training on the nature of the hazard, including the basics of radiation, and be provided with monitoring and decontamination services at emergency worker decon locations when their task is completed. After the release has stopped and the incident enters the intermediate phase, individuals approved for re-entry will be classified into one of 2 groups depending on the type and frequency of the activity being performed. One group will consist of individuals that may need to re-enter an area numerous times to conduct tasks involving animal care or maintenance of critical infrastructure and utilities. This group will have a dose limit of 2 rem in the first year and half a rem any subsequent year. The other group is considered to be general public and should only need to re-enter a single time to complete their task, such as property removal or pet retrieval. This group will have a dose limit of half a rem. At this time, during the intermediate phase, the counties must have re-entry control points set up and be prepared to receive requests, prioritize and sort them into the proper group, then approve or decline the requests for re-entry. Individuals seeking re-entry must be registered, receive training, dosimetry, personal protective equipment, and potassium iodide if necessary. Additionally, you'll need to determine how people re-entering the area reach their destination within a restricted zone. Will you allow them to use their own car? If so, you will need to provide vehicle monitoring and decontamination services for them when they leave the area. Or will you provide cars or a shuttle service for them once inside the restricted zone? Counties will also need to provide personal monitoring and decontamination services and collect dosimetry from those leaving the area. Having a plan in place for re-entry before an incident occurs will make for a much smoother response in the unlikely event of a nuclear power plant accident and will ensure the safety to those responding, as well as the safety of those people living and working in your county.